So good morning. It is Wednesday, May 9. Can't believe we're already into the middle of the month practically in May. May 9, 2018, and you're here on Java with Jerry, live as always from the penthouse suite of Stadium Towers, right across from Angel Stadium in Anaheim, and we're delighted you came and joined us. We got a big show for you today. I'm going to go fast through the news and the commentary about it, and our feature at the end of the show will be You Can't Make This Stuff Up. Got a good one for that, I think. But I'm going quickly because our guest today is my pal, Mayor Don Wagner from the City of Irvine, a man who has spent a couple of decades in public service. We'll talk about all of that and everything that's going on in Irvine, so now you know why I'm going fast, because it's a big city and there's a lot to talk about. All right. Glad you're here. As always, if you haven't been there, go to orangeslice.com. You can sign up there to have it be a podcast. If you want to listen to this instead of watch it, you can listen to it while you're walking the dog or working out in the gym. You can see all the past episodes there. You can catch the gallery of photos. Lots to see at orangeslice.com. Go do it. So what's on the show today? A little bit of news commentary. I told you about Mayor Don Wagner being here, and we'll talk a lot about what's going on with him, and then our feature. Let's talk about the news. Let's start with national news. A couple of things to talk about there. Donald Trump, our president, has exited the Iran nuke deal, said he would do it, did it, and now it is causing all kinds of havoc apparently in the Mideast. They're all burning flags and making noise, but the deal is going to be renegotiated by the master negotiator. He said he was going to do that. He promised it along the campaign trail, and say what you want about the president. When he makes a promise, he sort of keeps it, and he's putting people on notice, right? He's got China on notice. You're not going to mess around with trade. He's got North Korea on notice that the deal is going to be a good one or is not going to be a deal at all. And now he's got, Europe understanding that when he makes a promise, he's going to keep that promise. And whether they stay in the deal with Iran or not, the neighbors around Iran, including Saudi Arabia and some of the other Arab states and certainly Israel, are with him on this. So it's interesting. Speaking of North Korea, Pompeo's coming back apparently with 3 people who were detained who are Americans. They're flying in tomorrow morning, and I understand the president's going to go at 2 a.m. and meet them when they land in the U.S. That's good news, and I hope a harbinger of good things to come. So lots of stuff happening on the national front. State story, a sad story to share. Governor George Deukmejian, who served from 1982 to 1990 as our governor, passed away this week. He was 89 years old. He was a Long Beach native. He was the son of Armenian refugees who escaped the Armenian Holocaust and was obviously a proud Armenian and an icon in the Armenian community. I came from a town, Montebello, that was heavily Armenian, and Deukmejian was revered there. He served 28 years in public service, including service in the Assembly and the Senate on behalf of residents of the Long Beach area, and then later as Attorney General and certainly as governor. He was known as tight-fisted, a fiscal conservative, and tough on crime. Sounds a lot like my guest this morning, and certainly was a icon for many in his family and for his community, and did a great job as governor here in California. And we're sad that the Iron Duke has passed. So our hearts go out to the Deukmejian family and all who know, loved, and worked for the governor. All right, local news. We had an earthquake yesterday, not a big one, just a little quick jolt, 4.5, somewhere out in Cabazon in the desert. As native Californians, we usually don't get excited about this stuff until it hits 6.0, but there is a big one coming, so you got to be prepared. Speaking of quakes, and since we have a mayor, catch this, the city of North Hollywood is having all kinds of community meetings where they're trying to decide how they're going to deal with the cost of retrofitting all of their buildings. Some can cost between $100,000 to $1 million depending on the building, and so lots of discussion about whether the landlords are going to pay for that or the tenants are going to pay for it. Here's the answer: eventually the tenants will pay for it, but certainly a lot of activity around earthquakes in Southern California. No sports story because there's no football, so we'll get right past sports and say that's the news for Java with Jerry. Let's bring Mayor Wagner in. I'll bring him on set. While he's coming on, I'll tell you a little bit about him. Don't trip up over yourself there. Welcome aboard, my friend.
Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you. Thanks for coming in. So I'm going to read you very little out of his bio. Most of you know him anyway, but for those of you that don't, you should know a little bit about him. Don was first elected in 1998 to the South Orange County Community College District, where he served for 3 terms, I think, right?
3 terms.
3 terms. on that board, and also he has certain distinction we'll ask him about when he talks a little bit about his experience there, and that was an important board that did important work, and we'll talk about why they are so important. He was then elected to the state legislature and spent 6 years in the state assembly. He served there on budget, health, education, and revenue and taxation, and he was, since the moment he was elected, vice chair of the Assembly Judiciary Committee, where he had jurisdiction over the legal profession, the courts, and most state governing codes. In addition, he served on all of the financial committees with responsibility on all state spending revenue, and he earned a deserved expertise in government fiscal affairs reputation. He is, in fact, an expert on fiscal affairs, so you can blame all of us, and see he was on every revenue committee on Don, whatever it is you're unhappy about. He's been a practicing attorney in Orange County and a member of the Orange County business and legal community for a long time, served as judge pro tem of the Superior Court, has published articles on legal and cultural and political topics. He has been an activist in the American Lung Association, was the founding president of the Orange County chapter of the Federalist Society, which is a national organization of conservative lawyers, and has a proclivity for strict adherence to the Constitution among those lawyers, and he founded our chapter. He has a degree in English from the University of California, Los Angeles. If you couldn't tell, just look closely at his chest. He's a proud Bruin, and that makes him classically educated and brilliant. He got his Juris Doctorate from the University of California Hastings School of Law in 1987 and was quickly admitted to the bar. And he and his wife, who's a judge, so we know who has the authority in his house, moved to Irvine in 1991. All three of their children were educated in Irvine schools, and they've been active in that community forever, and that's just a tidbit from his resume.
My wife's always had the power. Now she's got the gavel to go with it.
And she's got a black robe, dude, so you just say, you got to click heels. Yeah, she is stylish. She's my favorite Wagner, and she knows
for
it.
For good reason.
Hi, Megan. All right, let's talk a little bit about your political career. I got 20 years to cram into less than 20 minutes, so you have to talk fast. You got to listen fast.
All right.
Let's start with the South Orange County Community College District. A unique district, Don, and I said it was unique because it has a reputation about its fiscal conservatism and really an accomplishment of balancing budgets and never going to the taxpayer. Talk about it.
Well, I did have the opportunity to serve there for 12 years. 6 of those years I was the board president.
And that's unprecedented,
Which it was unprecedented.
Yeah.
And so I was quite proud to have that role, and it also allowed me to just keep as tight a watch as I possibly could on the budget. What is interesting and what folks don't really necessarily realize about some of these special districts, community colleges, water districts, sanitation districts, you name them. We think of the city councils, but these local districts have an enormous amount of money going through them, your tax dollars, and have an enormous amount of power. When I left the community college district in 2010, our budget was $500 billion.
Wow.
That's $500 billion of taxpayer money. Well, if you can't balance a budget with that much money coming in, if you are insisting on giving it away to the unions and to unsustainable pensions, you're not doing your job. And I made sure that board did its job. So we were able to use that money effectively, wisely, keep up with the education programs that we needed to, but also keep the physical plant in good working order. And you can do it without raising taxes. You can do it without bonds, and that was what I made sure I would do for my entire time.
You say that, but I don't know of another community college district that has never had a bond and never raised taxes and kept its physical plant in condition and expanded and made its campuses hum like South Orange County Community College District, and still do, because as you know, if you watched last week, we had Glenn Rockmore in, and we talked about the development ATAP and the unique public-private partnership that's being inculcated on that campus and technology. And again, it just sort of follows, I think, the fiscal conservatism that your board laid down as a hallmark for all community college districts. I wish they would all do that. So then you became a refugee from education, and you went up to Sacramento, where you really weren't a refugee from education because you were so involved in everything that was going on in the budget up there. Talk a little bit about your service in the 6 years you were in the assembly.
Sure, I did spend 6
By the way, he was my assemblyman, so that goes to show.
Honored to be so. So I did spend 6 years up there, and as you mentioned in the introduction, was on all of the fiscal committees, the budget, the appropriation, the tax and revenue committee, and so had a real good chance to get in and see the budget, work with the budget. You want to blame me for what went on up there? I know you were just kidding, but at the end of the day, what I was doing up there was oftentimes voting no on bad policy and trying to shape it to make it a little bit better. As a Republican coming up out of a conservative Republican area, there are some real limitations to what you can accomplish, but you can't accomplish things.
Yeah.
What you can do is raise the issues that need to be raised, to get them out there, get them in the press, get people thinking about them, even if you don't get the votes that you want. And so I was able to do that. Bills, for example, to try to make the state a little bit more business friendly. Bills to rein in some of the abuses of the ADA. Bills that would, if enacted, I think, benefit the state economically. At the end of the day, they don't get enacted, but you raise the issues. The other thing you can do, and where you can be successful, is representing some of the local interests and taking a specific bill that doesn't have a statewide appeal, but fixes a problem in your own district. Right. And so representing a number of the great cities here in Orange County, I was able to carry bills that specifically helped them. Orange Park Acres, we had a bill that helped them. Lake Forest Redevelopment had a bill that helped them. And those things can get done if you're willing to work hard and you're willing to work across the aisle sometimes if necessary, because that's where the votes are.
And I talked about the fact that you served as Vice Chair of Judiciary, and that's an incredibly important role because it does more than just talk about review of the judiciary or what's going on in terms of the bar. Talk a little bit about what that committee means and what the role of a vice chair is.
Well, he
would have been a chairman, but he didn't have enough Republicans in the legislature to have chairmanship.
Right. The ranking Republican is the vice chairman of the committee, and what you end up doing as vice chairman is having an opportunity to somewhat shape the agenda. You deal a lot more in depth with the committee staff as the vice chairman, other than just as a member. And what you also have the opportunity to do, especially in a committee like Judiciary, which, as you said, touches so many of the codes, where they're writing law, and the law is reflected in the codes. Well, if you've got a committee that touches the vast majority of the California codes, you've got a committee that is touching the vast majority of what the legislature is doing to or for the people of the state of California.
And the vast majority of what goes on in your life, because all of it is touched in some way or another by the law.
Exactly. And so we would have a very broad array of bills. And again, as the Republican up there, you're championing the values of the community that you represent that maybe aren't going to be the majority, but you have an opportunity to ask the questions. You have an opportunity to put the issues on the record. You have a little bit of an opportunity to work with the legislation, massage it, and try to make a bill somewhat better than maybe it reached.
You're shaping the conversation. You got a reputation for doing that, for shaping that conversation up there, and being not just a reputation for a fiscal brilliant legislator, but also a judicial hawk as well. And I think that comes from your time in the Federalist days. But I just wanted you to talk a little bit about that state experience. And it's a juxtaposition to where I really want to go, Mr. Mayor. So so now we're going to head into the fat of the bat. So you leave a $500 billion budget in the South Orange County Community College District. You go up to Sacramento. You're dealing with billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars in budget. And now you come back home and you say, all right, I'll stand up and take the role and run for mayor. And you're now mayor of Irvine, an incredibly complex city. And I think the economic engine of Orange County. Compare it. What's it like to be mayor as compared to being a member of 80 people in the legislative body that you served in, or really being in charge of a school district, which is a whole different role?
It's a fascinating juxtaposition, because in some ways you are dealing with a whole lot of smaller, to be honest, smaller issues. You're dealing with things like traffic in a city. You're dealing with growth in a city. You're representing, in the case of Irvine, 270,000 people, as opposed to up in Sacramento, where you're talking about multi-billion-dollar, for example, water projects, and you're talking about policy for a state of, we're now almost 40 million people. Wow. So it's a very different mindset. The good part about it, though, is it's so much easier to get something done.
Yeah.
Because you're now one of 5
You need
on
3
a city
votes.
council.
Right.
You need 3 votes.
Right.
And you also have an opportunity to work more individually. Up there, you got to get 41 votes, and it's really hard to spend time talking with 40 of your best friends to try to move policy. Here, you can do a whole lot more at the local level.
And you're doing it for your neighbors. You're not far away doing it for people that you haven't really met. You've driven these streets. You've been in those shopping centers. You know those parks.
When folks come to me and say traffic in Irvine is worse than it was 10 years ago, well, you don't need to tell me that because I drive those same streets.
Right.
And what I have to do now is try to find solutions to those problems.
So you say a city of 270,000, but that's nighttime population when everybody goes night-night. Irvine is incredibly robust in its business life, and it explodes in daytime population. It's a real job center. Talk about what you are doing with economic development from Amazon to Europe and everybody in between.
All right, well, we started when was it? I guess middle of last year, in an effort to attract Amazon's HQ2. That was ultimately, according to Amazon, they're looking elsewhere. But that was really an opportunity for us to get the entire business community together, get the education community together, get the players that have been so successful in Irvine to kind of pick up our eyes and look out at the horizon and what can we do, what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, so that we can better benefit the entire Orange County, indeed the entire Southern California region. And so it was an exercise in inventory, and it was an exercise in planning the next stages of where Irvine and all of South Orange County especially is going to go.
I think it was brilliant. I mean, beyond the fact that it gave you a shot in the running to get Bezos to put a headquarters here, which would have brought thousands of jobs and made us even more of a powerhouse in terms of business, it did give us a chance to showcase Orange County, and in particular, the robust business community in Irvine, and the fact that we could accommodate a worldwide opportunity like that.
It did. It was eye-opening, not so much for me, I hope, but for a whole lot of people out in the business community and just in the community in general. Because it also provides then the springboard. You talk about Europe. I did have an opportunity back in February to take a trip with the Chamber of Commerce and with some representatives from UCI and others in the business community. We took a trip to the United Kingdom where in 4 days we met with 40 life sciences companies it was a heavy schedule, that are looking to find an entree into the United States.
Was it all life sciences?
It was all life sciences, but it was various different components or niches of the life science industry.
Wow.
And so what we had an opportunity to do was say, you know, when you're in the United Kingdom and you're thinking of the United States, you're going to think of Boston, you're going to think of Silicon Valley, but wait a minute. And we had the work we had done for the Amazon proposal at our fingertips to say, here is something that you need to think about. And we've got UCI and its life sciences. We've got folks like Edwards. Edwards was on the trip with us. We've got folks like Allergan. We have got folks that have made a substantial investment in Orange County and been successful.
And an extraordinarily well-educated workforce. I think the vast majority of people who live in Irvine have at least one college degree, sometimes multiple degrees. It's got a world-class university and lots of world-class K-12 education. Kudos all over the United States. People know about Irvine schools. So you had a lot to offer.
We have an enormous amount to offer, and it's, at least during election time, all the result of the mayor's work. But in truth, Jerry, as you know, having also had the opportunity to lead a city, what really is great about our communities is the stuff that comes up from the ground. It's the folks doing the work, like the UCIs and like the business community, less what comes out of City Hall. It's our effort to marshal it and showcase it, but at the end of the day, there are some folks in our communities doing absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, it's a lot about what the texture of a community is and all the assets of the stakeholders, but it does take that marshaling, and you do a good job of it in Irvine, and you've done a good job of it as mayor. Let's talk a little bit about some of the other things that mayors do that maybe community college district presidents and certainly assemblymen don't do. Let's talk about parks. You got a great big one, and all of a sudden stuff is happening in the great park. For many years in previous administrations, it laid fallow and it just was an old base that wasn't going anywhere, but not anymore. Tell us about it.
We've been very fortunate fortunate over the course of the last year plus to really see some dynamic growth at the Great Park. For years it was a political football, as you know, and an awful lot of money was sunk into the project that went to consultants, that went to developers who didn't develop.
But you had a balloon.
We've got a great orange balloon, and if you haven't ridden on the balloon, take a ride on the balloon.
Ride, yeah.
But you will now, if you get up on that balloon, you will end up having an opportunity to see, number one, the first phase of a very robust development of some of the park's area around it. Soccer stadiums, football, baseball, softball, volleyball. We're looking to put in a pool. We've got open fields. We've got a ton of fields. A ton of fields that attract players, youth lacrosse, youth soccer. If it's played on a field anywhere in California, because as a parent who had a kid playing soccer, I've gone to a lot of remote spots. We've got opportunities to draw them there, put on tournaments, and help fill up some of the local hotels, help fill up some of the restaurants, and provide world-class playing facilities. But that's not all. We've got a live music. We've got an amphitheater back. It's temporary. We're going to build a permanent one. We're talking about bringing back, and in negotiations with Wild Rivers. We used to have Wild Rivers. We're bringing them back. And we've got about 260 acres of what we're calling the Cultural Terrace still to build out. And we're in the process of talking to who we think could be players, and there are some nationally renowned figures. The Smithsonian Institution, we're talking with the Olympic committees. I can't tell you when we're going to get all of these deals done and what all they're going to look like, but the opportunities are amazing. It is dynamic what's going on out there.
I know you're not sitting in your city, you're sitting in Anaheim, but we got Ducks around the corner, not far from here. Let's talk about Irvine and the Ducks.
I thank you for reminding me, because
you're talking about world-class sports facilities, and the mayor doesn't mention that.
I just 2 days ago did a tour of the facility we're putting up there, and to tell folks, we've got a 280,000 square foot ice facility. 4 sheets of ice. The Ducks are going to practice there. We also have an opportunity to bring Olympic ice skating there. Not a done deal yet, but it's being worked on. And what we're going to have is, because ice is at such a premium around Orange County, we're going to be one of, if not the largest ice facility in the entire Southern California region that will provide opportunities for ice skaters, for ice hockey, and also the NHL. We've talked about the Ducks. Some of the teams, when they come into Anaheim to practice, we expect to get them out at our facility. 280,000 square feet, 4 sheets of ice, largest park facility of its kind in the United States.
So part of what you're doing, Don, you and your colleagues, is allowing, facilitating the private sector coming in and doing partnerships, which you're famous for, and really providing recreational opportunities for not just Irvine, but really in the Great Park for all of Orange County, which was the commitment that was the original vision, including connectivity to walking trails and into the, forest and down to the ocean. I mean, you really are becoming sort of the linchpin for how we're going to connect the county to all this open recreation, which is a hallmark also of the quality of life in Irvine.
One of the things we do pride ourselves on Irvine, about a third of our land is open space. And it does have the bike trails and the walking trails. The Great Park provides a lot of connectivity. We just, again, a month or so ago, opened up the wildlife corridor. So we're going to be able to get the wildlife from the Cleveland National Forest all the way down to the beach. Amazing. And we're going to have trails that'll go the exact, that exact course. So we are providing open space that is unparalleled in Orange County, because it is the vision of an Orange County Great Park. In fact, I think it's going to be a Southern California Great Park when this thing is all said and done, and I'm committed to getting it said and done.
Well, it's going to be larger than some of the national treasures that we've had, certainly Golden Gate Park, Balboa Park, the great parks of metropolitan, back east, New York Central Park, all those kinds of things you think about when you think of great parks.
Right.
You call it a great park, I think it really will be, and I'm excited to watch it happen. It's happening next door to us, and so I wanted you to talk a little bit about it.
And it's done on public-private partnerships. It's not all taxpayer money.
And it's been wisely managed since the new administration has been in charge. So congratulations on that. Let's talk a little bit though about its military history and the fact that you aren't forgetting those who served there. I know it's been controversial. I'm going to take you into the controversy a little bit. Tell us about the history of this whole notion of having a veterans cemetery in Irvine and where things stand now.
Okay, the issue has been around for a couple of years. The veterans have come to the city council, and then they ended up coming up to the legislature when I was up there. And we do not have a veteran cemetery in Orange County. The closest are down in San Diego or out in Riverside.
Right.
So the idea was pitched to me and to others to facilitate the placement of a state veteran cemetery on the El Toro base, because the El Toro base had for years been the launching point for so many folks off to protect our freedom around the world.
Yep.
It is a hallowed place for so many veterans. We're going to put a veteran cemetery on the El Toro base. The issue has been unfortunately politicized by some of the folks who had mismanaged some of the money a few years ago. We have a site right now that has been identified. It's been approved by the state. It's got support from everyone from the governor on down to a majority of the council.
Right.
And it is a very prominent place in the city. In fact, as you drive into the city or out of the city, you will see it right there.
Yeah, it's down by the Y.
It's down by the Y. It is pristine ground. They've been growing strawberries on it for years. The alternate site is a site up kind of outside of the Great Park. It's up away from the border of the city. It's kind of in the middle of the city. And the land is contaminated.
Yeah.
The land has 50 years of oil and
jet fuel
on it. It's got World War II era, Korean War era, and Vietnam era buildings, and it's going to cost $77 million to get that site prepared for the first internment. And it's going to take years to do it, and it's not approved by the state.
$77 million just to get it ready to build the cemetery, and then you got to build the cemetery on top of that? Well, that
$77 million.
And who's got the $77 million?
Well, that's the question. So far, nobody. Some folks on the council think the council can pay for it, that your tax dollars can pay for it.
Wow.
Some folks on the council and some politicians who've been thrown out of office think that the state will come through. I've talked with the state. The state is not coming up with the money. They think the Veterans Administration is going to come through. I've sat down and talked with the Veterans Administration. They are not coming up with the money to make this happen.
Yeah.
The Veterans Administration, the state administration, and the majority of veteran organizations, the Veterans of Foreign Wars, the American Legion, their leadership is all in support of the Strawberry Fields site. And that will require a yes on B vote.
So I was going to ask you about that. So there's a measure on the ballot. Talk about that. When is it going to be on the ballot? When will voters see it, and how they should be voting if they want a veteran cemetery?
All right. The measure is Measure B. It's on the Irvine ballot for June 5. So you should already have your
in the mail. Yeah.
In the mail, you should already have the literature on the subject from the Registrar of Voters, and the vote is June 5. I am asking for a yes on B vote. That will get us the cemetery. It'll get it sooner. It'll get it at much less of a cost to taxpayer, and it'll get it on much, much better land. So yes on Measure B is what I am hoping that the public recognizes, because there is, to my mind, no good argument, and that's not just what I feel, but that's what the veterans
Yes
say.
on B. If you honor, as we all do, the veteran history in Orange County, we were home for Marines for many, many years, and a launching point, as you said, for a lot of military careers and for the protection of our country in many ways, dating way back to World War II. You got to vote for those veterans. Julie just told me we're out of time. That's it. We just did it. I don't know how we're going to be able to do this and ask you. I still got more questions left on my cards. You want to hang out? We'll talk later?
Tell me when.
All right, so it's time for our feature. Let's do our feature, and we'll get the mayor on the road so he can keep governing. And so This week, it's You Can't Make This Stuff Up, and this one just sort of jumped out and grabbed me, and it will come as a surprise to few. The California Energy Commission is going to be voting today, May 9th, on whether or not they're going to require solar. They're going to mandate solar panels on every home. Yep, the 5 unelected commissioners of the Energy Commission are going to decide whether the average house will go up by $12,000 in cost, and the average electric bill for that homeowner will go up by $19,000 a year to do something really cool for Mother Earth. Now, this is policy from a state agency in a state, by the way, where the legislature is saying, yeah, we don't have enough affordable housing, so we're planning some legislation. That's it, or maybe a regulation. That'll help us get more affordable housing. Meantime, their committees are doing stuff like adding to the cost of building housing at all. You can't make this stuff up, only in California. I want to say thank you to my friend Don Wagner for being here, my former assemblyman, my neighboring mayor, and I want you to all pay attention to that June 5th ballot. Help them get a Veterans Cemetery. Thank you for being here.
Yes, indeed. Jerry, my pleasure.
Your parting gift is your Java with Jerry mug, so take that with you with pride. I want to see you drinking from that on the dais, Mr. Mayor. We will be back next week, next Wednesday. We will have Dr. Affable. He is the former CEO of the St. Joseph Hoag Medical System. He's going to be here to talk about mental health, particularly important issue with homelessness, which I never got to talk to you about. And Irvine is in the middle, as you know, of trying to solve problems with that. So we'll have the mayor back again. Have a good week, make good decisions, and we'll see you next Wednesday on Java with Jerry.